In a quiet, faraway land, where the clouds were as soft as whipped cream, and the rivers sang lullabies, there lived a gentle little princess named Lucy. Her castle wasn't made of stone or bricks, but of smooth, round glass that caught the colors of the sky and glowed like a lantern in the night. The castle stood on a hill that touched the clouds, and every evening the wind would hum a sweet tune through the tall, silver grass. Princess Lucy had hair the color of moonlight and eyes like tiny pieces of the morning sky. She wore slippers made of stardust and gowns that shimmered like soap bubbles. But what made her most special of all was her paintbrush. It wasn't an ordinary paintbrush. Oh no. This one was made from the tail of a comet and dipped in the softest light of the first star each night. With it, she could paint dreams, skies, and even the quiet between the stars. Each evening, when the sun began to yawn and dip low behind the hills, Lucy would climb to the very top of her castle's tallest tower. From there, she could see the whole sky stretching wide and peaceful above her. She would sit on her favorite cloud-shaped cushion, dip her brush into a little jar of star-kissed colors, and begin to paint the night. She painted slow and gentle swirls of dark blue and purples, soft dots of stars, and flowing rivers of silver light. Sometimes she added a sleepy moon that smiled just right, or tiny glowing shapes that floated like fireflies. As she painted, the sky would slowly change. The golden light of day would quietly fade, and the world would become a soft, sleepy blanket of deep, dreamy colors. The creatures of the land loved when Lucy painted the sky. The owls would blink their round eyes and hoot softly, the deer would nestle into the tall grass, and the little cloud sheep would fluff themselves up and drift gently across the sky, smiling as they went. Even the winds would hush and wait, watching as the princess brushed color after color into the heavens. Lucy never rushed. She painted slowly, carefully, as if each stroke carried a little wish or a tiny song. Sometimes she hummed a quiet tune, and the stars would twinkle in time. Other times, she whispered stories to the moon, and the moon would listen with wide, glowing eyes. One evening, after she had finished painting a sky filled with soft lavender clouds and sleepy stars, she leaned back and looked around. Her world was quiet and kind. Below her, the hills were wrapped in nighttime blue, and the glass castle twinkled like a jar full of glowworms. The trees swayed gently, and the lake nearby mirrored the sky she had just painted. She sighed a happy, sleepy sigh and hugged her paintbrush close. But then something caught her eye. Way out near the edge of the horizon, past the hills and the sleepy trees, there was a little patch of sky that looked pale and empty. It wasn't dark or sparkly like the rest. It looked forgotten, like a part of the sky had drifted off without its dreams. Lucy tilted her head and blinked. She had never noticed it before. Her sky was always full and cozy, but this little corner seemed to be missing something. It didn't feel sad exactly, just quiet in a way that made her curious. She whispered to the wind, asking if it had seen anything. The wind danced around her and tugged gently at her hair, as if it had a secret it wasn't sure how to tell. The princess smiled softly and whispered back, "Maybe tomorrow I will go and see." And with that, She stood and tiptoed down the spiral stairs of her tower. Each step glowed faintly beneath her feet, lighting her way like tiny fireflies. She passed the sleepy halls of the castle, where moon mice curled up in teacups and dragonflies rested on velvet curtains. She reached her cozy little room and slipped into her bed, which was shaped like a cloud and covered in blankets that smelled like vanilla and dreams. Her paintbrush rested on a pillow beside her, and the jar of star colors sat on her nightstand, glowing faintly in the dark. Lucy yawned and cuddled into her blanket, her thoughts soft and floaty. The sky outside her window twinkled gently. The stars she had painted blinked slowly, like they were ready for sleep too. She listened to the soft hush of the castle, the gentle rustle of the wind in the trees, and the quiet dripping of dream dew from the leaves. As her eyes began to close, she thought again of the quiet patch of sky. What might be out there, past the hills and the clouds? Who might live beneath that sleeping space? She didn't know yet, but the thought made her heart feel warm and curious. Maybe tomorrow, she whispered again, just before sleep carried her away. And the stars outside twinkled back, as if to say, "Yes, little princess." Tomorrow, the morning came softly, like a feather landing on a pillow. The sun peeked over the faraway hills with gentle gold fingers, brushing warm light through the castle windows. Birds with velvet wings chirped sleepy songs, and the trees stretched their branches like someone waking from a very good dream. Princess Lucy opened her eyes slowly. She blinked at the soft shapes of her room, the cloud-carved shelves, her round window glowing with morning light, and her little jar of star colors, which had dimmed now to a pale silver. Her paintbrush still lay beside her, nestled in its tiny pillow. She sat up slowly, yawning a big, cozy yawn. Then she stretched her arms and smiled. Today, she remembered, was the day she would visit the quiet patch of sky. Outside her window, the hills were dressed in morning mist, and the sky was pale and open, waiting for evening to come again. But Lucy didn't want to wait that long. She wanted to see what was out there, where the stars had forgotten to twinkle. She climbed out of bed and tiptoed to her wardrobe, where gowns of every color hung like sleepy rainbows. Today, she chose her softest gown, the one that shimmered like morning dew, and her slippers that glowed just a little when she walked. She tucked her paintbrush into a ribbon sash and slipped the tiny jar into her pocket, just in case she needed a bit of starlight on the way. Down the halls of the glass castle she wandered, passing rooms full of dreams still sleeping. The moon cat, who slept in a basket made of lullabies, opened one eye and meowed a soft good morning. Lucy giggled and gave her a gentle pat before continuing on her way. Out the castle door she went, into the garden where bluebell flowers hummed to themselves and butterflies fluttered like lazy snowflakes. The path to the hills was lined with mossy stones and whispering trees. As she walked, the breeze carried with it the scent of warm honey and soft grass. Lucy followed the path slowly, listening to the world around her. A family of cloud bunnies hopped past, leaving tiny puffs of fluff in their wake. A sleepy fox wearing a crown of clover watched her pass with half-closed eyes. Everything felt calm and curious. She walked and walked, her steps light and steady. The sun drifted gently across the sky as if floating on a silver boat. Birds flew in lazy loops above her, and the clouds moved like slow dancers. After a while, the hills began to change. The grass grew even softer, like velvet under her feet, and the air smelled like stardrops and dreams. Then, at last, she reached the edge of the hills. Just beyond them, the sky stretched wide and pale. Lucy stopped and looked up. There it was, that quiet patch of sky she had seen the night before. It was still pale and still, without even a flicker of starlight. She tilted her head. The rest of the sky was bright with day, but this little corner felt like it was waiting for something. Lucy stepped forward, her slippers barely making a sound. As she moved closer, the air around her began to shimmer ever so slightly, like the moment just before a dream begins. And then, something tiny and glowing fluttered down from the sky. It looked like a feather, but when it landed in her hand, Lucy saw that it was a tiny wing made of light. It was soft and warm, and it hummed with a sleepy little sound that made her heart feel full. She looked up again, and this time she saw it, a little floating island nestled right at the edge of the sky. It was made of clouds and moonglass, with trees shaped like stars and a pond that glowed like a pearl. The island drifted slowly, quietly, as if it didn't want to bother anyone. Lucy took a deep breath and smiled. This was a place she had never seen before. A secret place tucked into the folds of the sky. She reached into her pocket and touched the jar of starlight. Then she whispered softly to the wind, "Will you take me there?" The wind twirled around her, playful and kind, and lifted her gently off the ground. It carried her higher and higher until the hills were far below and the sky wrapped around her like a giant, cozy blanket. As she drifted toward the floating island, everything became quiet and soft. The only sound was the gentle hush of the wind and the distant sigh of the clouds. The little island welcomed her with open arms, its trees swaying and sparkles dancing in the air. Lucy stepped onto the cloud's soft ground and looked around. It was peaceful here. The trees whispered lullabies, and little glowing birds perched on the branches, blinking slowly like stars. A gentle stream trickled through the island, its water full of tiny floating lights that looked like wishes. She walked slowly, taking it all in. There were no houses here, no roads or signs, just softness and quiet and beauty, and in the middle of it all, there was a little easel. It stood alone, made from silverwood and moon thread. A blank canvas waited on it, perfectly smooth and white. Lucy's heart fluttered. She knew somehow that this was why she had come. This place wasn't forgotten. It was waiting. She took out her paintbrush and dipped it lightly into the jar in her pocket. The color shimmered, glowing gently in the soft air. Then, slowly, carefully, she began to paint. She painted stars, small and cozy. She painted sleepy swirls of night. She painted a moon with a kind smile and clouds that curled like cattails. She painted quietly, just as she always did, with little hums and soft thoughts until the canvas began to glow. And as she painted, the quiet patch of sky above the island began to change. It deepened into a gentle blue, then purple, then soft velvet black. The stars she painted on the canvas blinked into the sky, one by one, like sleepy eyes opening for bedtime. The little island seemed to sigh with happiness. The glowing birds sang a soft tune, and the trees swayed in time. Lucy smiled. She didn't know what this place was called, or why it had waited so long, but now it felt full again, full of dreams and softness, full of stars. She sat down beside the easel, her paintbrush still in her hand, and watched the sky above glow with all the tiny lights she had placed there. The wind wrapped around her like a blanket, and everything felt warm and still. And there, on the quiet island in the sky, the princess rested. The stars twinkled above her, and the clouds curled nearby like gentle pillows. The sky was whole again. The soft sky above the floating island glowed gently like a lullaby made of light. Princess Lucy lay on her back in the cozy grass, her paintbrush resting beside her, the jar of star colors tucked safely in the folds of her gown. Around her, the island breathed with the hush of sleepy magic. The glowing birds had nestled into the treetops, and the little lights in the stream blinked slowly, like they were drifting off to dream too. Lucy smiled quietly to herself. The stars she had painted into the sky twinkled above her, each one a tiny whisper of peace. It felt like the whole world was sighing in contentment. She closed her eyes for a moment and listened to the soft rustle of the breeze, the gentle gurgle of the stream, and the tiniest hum of moonlight above. Then, just as she was beginning to doze, she heard a sound. It was quiet, like a giggle wrapped in feathers. Lucy sat up slowly, brushing a bit of cloud fluff from her gown. She looked toward the silver trees, and there, peeking out from behind a glowing trunk, was a tiny creature. It was no bigger than a teacup, and shaped like a puffy snowball. Its ears were long and floppy, and its eyes sparkled like tiny stars. It blinked at her, then gave a little hop forward, its body bouncing softly like a jelly bean made of dreams. Lucy giggled. "Hello there," she said softly, though not out loud, just with her heart. The little creature tilted its head, then hopped again, this time closer. It came right up to her and gently tapped its nose against her hand, which made her giggle even more. Its fur was the softest thing she'd ever felt, like a whisper made out of marshmallows. "Are you the guardian of this place?" Lucy asked in her quiet heart voice. The creature wiggled its ears and gave a tiny sneeze that sounded like a silver bell. Then it turned and bounced toward the center of the island, looking back with a wiggle, as if to say, "Come along, follow me." So Lucy stood, brushing off her gown, and followed the fluffy creature across the glowing grass. They passed trees shaped like stars and bushes that sparkled with tiny bells. The air was filled with the scent of vanilla clouds and sleepy dreams. Soon they came to a little hill, and at the top was a round pond. The water inside shimmered with rainbow ripples, and in the very center floated a single glowing lily pad. The fluffy creature sat down and looked up at her, its big eyes wide and kind. Lucy stepped to the edge of the pond and looked into the water. She expected to see her reflection, but instead she saw something else, something wondrous. The pond was like a window into the sky, not the sky above, but another one hidden deep in the folds of the world. In this sky, stars floated in shapes she had never painted before, gentle whales swimming through constellations, tiny dancing lights in swirling patterns, and clouds shaped like dreams she hadn't dreamed yet. She gasped softly, her heart fluttering. "This sky is waiting too," she whispered. The fluffy creature bounced up and down with excitement. It tapped its nose to the pond's edge, and suddenly a trail of sparkling mist rose from the water. It curled through the air like a ribbon, slow and graceful. Lucy reached out and touched it, and in that moment, the pond shimmered even brighter, and a soft voice filled her mind. "Paint the skies that dream beyond dreams." The words were as gentle as a breeze and as sweet as a lullaby. Lucy looked at her paintbrush, then at the pond again. She knew what she needed to do. With a calm breath, she stepped back from the pond and sat cross-legged on the grass. The fluffy creature curled beside her, warm and still. She dipped her brush into her jar again, this time pulling out a color she hadn't used before. A soft, glowing blue that looked like a secret. And then she began to paint. She painted a sky full of floating lanterns, each one carrying a wish. She painted gentle whales that soared through the stars, their tails trailing silver dust. She painted sleepy suns resting behind crescent moons, and tiny birds made of music that flew in loops and lullabies. Every stroke of her brush sent the images dancing above the pond until the sky above the island began to shimmer with new shapes and new dreams. The fluffy creature watched with shining eyes, its ears twitching with happiness. As she painted, the air around her grew even softer, even warmer. The trees swayed in rhythm with her brush, and the stream sang a slow, dreamy tune that matched the quiet joy in her heart. When she finally set her brush down, the entire sky above the island had changed again. It was still peaceful, still gentle, but now it held something new, wonder. Lucy smiled and leaned back on the grass. The fluffy creature curled into her lap, and she stroked its soft head as she looked up at the sky she'd brought to life. "Thank you," she whispered to the island, to the stars, to the pond, and to the quiet magic that had called her here. The wind answered with a soft sigh, and the trees rustled like pages of a bedtime book being turned. Lucy closed her eyes and listened to the hush of the world around her. The stars twinkled above, the stream trickled on, and all was calm. The stars above the island drifted slowly like sleepy dancers swaying to the hush of the night. Princess Lucy sat beneath the silver trees, her head resting gently against the soft fur of the little cloud creature beside her. It had fallen asleep with its tiny paws curled under its chin, breathing in slow puffs that sounded like the quietest snores. The sky was full now, full of wonder, full of light, full of dreams. But Lucy knew there were more skies waiting, not just the one above her castle or above this dreamy island, but skies far beyond, hidden in places only the wind remembered. She looked up, her eyes soft and thoughtful. Hanging in the sky, just beyond the drifting stars, she saw something new, a trail of glowing bubbles floating high above, each one shimmering with its own rainbow mist. They rose slowly, like thoughts drifting into dreams. Lucy stood, careful not to wake the little creature. She tucked her jar of star colors safely into her pocket and held her paintbrush close. The bubbles sparkled as if they were waiting just for her. The wind returned, swirling gently at her feet. It wrapped around her ankles like a scarf made of air and lifted her slowly, softly, into the sky. She floated upward higher and higher. Past the glowing trees and sleepy ponds, past the cloud island and into the open air. The bubbles drifted all around her now. Each one was about the size of a pillow, and inside each there was a tiny shimmering world. One held a sky with golden clouds shaped like teacups. Another had a moon that blinked like a sleepy cat. Lucy reached out and touched one gently with her fingertip. Pop! The bubble didn't burst. Instead, it opened like a flower, blooming into a soft path of light. Lucy floated forward, following the path as it curled and swirled through the sky. The farther she went, the quieter the world became, until all she could hear was the soft whoosh of air and the gentle hum of her own heartbeat. Then, just ahead, the path of bubbles led to a new place, a floating garden that drifted in the sky like a big, cozy nest. It was filled with plants that glowed in soft blues and purples, and flowers that opened and closed like they were breathing. Tiny lantern, bugs flitted between the petals, leaving trails of light wherever they flew. Lucy touched down lightly on a circle of moss that felt like a warm blanket. The garden smelled like lavender and sugar clouds. In the center, there was a round fountain made of moon, stone, and in it bubbled a gentle stream of twinkling water. She wandered slowly through the garden. Each step she took caused the flowers nearby to hum a low, peaceful note. Some flowers had petals shaped like stars, others looked like tiny umbrellas, and one even curled into a heart whenever she came close. Then she saw them, more creatures, just as gentle and curious as the cloud, fluff friend she had met before. These ones were shaped like floating pillows with tiny wings. They drifted through the air slowly, giggling softly and blinking with sleepy eyes. One of them floated up to her and offered her a petal filled with glowing nectar, which tasted like warm honey and dreams. Lucy smiled and bowed her head politely. The pillow creature spun in a circle, leaving sparkles in the air, and then pointed toward a low stone bench at the edge of the garden. She walked over and sat down, her paintbrush resting across her lap. The pillow creatures gathered around, settling on soft lily pads and tiny hammocks made from silken vines. They looked at her with wide, waiting eyes. "Would you like me to paint for you?" she asked in her gentle heart voice. All the creatures blinked at once. So she dipped her brush into the jar again, this time pulling out a soft pink color that shimmered like morning light. She painted into the air right above the fountain, and as she painted, the pictures floated gently, hanging in the sky like feathers caught in a breeze. She painted a sky where balloons floated endlessly, each carrying a dreamer wrapped in a cozy blanket. She painted a moon that gave out lullabies in tiny envelopes. She painted stars shaped like kittens and clouds that bounced like jelly. The pillow creatures clapped their wings together in delight, their giggles sounding like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Some of them floated closer to the paintings and curled up inside them, drifting through the scenes like they were part of a dream, and Lucy smiled, her heart full and warm. She didn't know where the next place would be or what skies still needed her brush. But for now, this garden in the sky was her home. Just for a little while, the creatures nestled close, their tiny wings fluttering, and the flowers sang their soft, slow songs. Lucy leaned back on the mossy bench and looked up at the sky she had just painted. It shimmered above her, a lullaby of colors and calm. She closed her eyes and let her thoughts float, light and quiet. Around her, the garden glowed with peace, and the pillow creatures began to drift into sleep. The wind curled gently around her once more, like a promise that more dreams were waiting. But not yet. For now, the princess rested, and the sky held its breath in the soft silence of sleep. The garden in the sky was still and quiet, wrapped in a soft blanket of twilight. The pillow creatures floated gently in their sleep, their wings twitching now and then as they dreamed of painted moons and lullaby clouds. The flowers glowed faintly in the dusk, their petals slowly curling closed like tiny umbrellas at the end of a gentle rain. Princess Lucy sat quietly on the mossy bench, her paintbrush resting in her lap. She looked out over the floating garden, her heart full of warmth. It felt like she had painted a little piece of peace into the world, and the world had smiled back. But then, ever so softly, the wind returned. It came not with a rush, but with a whisper. It twirled around her ankles, then danced up to her hair, nudging it gently like a friend asking for a quiet walk. Lucy opened her eyes and looked up. Above the garden, a drift of soft clouds had formed. They were shaped like stairs, wide and pillowy, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Each step looked like it had been placed there just for her. She glanced at the sleeping creatures, gave them a little wave, and whispered in her heart, "Thank you for sharing your dreams with me." Then she stepped onto the first cloud stair. It held her gently like a cradle. She took another step and another, and each one lifted her a little higher, as though the sky itself was carrying her toward something wonderful. The stars above twinkled softly, as if they knew she was coming. Up and up she went, the wind at her back, the hush of the sleeping garden growing fainter below, and then, at the very top of the stairs, she arrived at something new, a door. It floated in the sky all by itself. There were no walls around it, just the door, tall and round at the top. Made of wood that shimmered like starlight, it had a little golden knob and a tiny window shaped like a crescent moon. Lucy reached out and gently turned the knob. The door opened without a sound, and behind it was not a room, but a soft tunnel made of swirling colors, blues and purples and gentle pinks, all drifting together like clouds in a sleepy sky. It looked like the inside of a dream. She stepped through the door, and it closed behind her with the quietest click. Inside the tunnel, she floated without walking. The colors wrapped around her like silk scarves, and soft music played somewhere far away, the kind of music that made you want to close your eyes and smile. Then, slowly, the colors parted, and she found herself in a new sky. This sky was different. It was filled with floating bubbles, not the ones she had followed before, but bigger ones, like cozy rooms. Each bubble held a tiny world inside, drifting through the air like balloons on a quiet breeze. Lucy floated up to one and peeked inside. Inside was a village made of teacups. Little creatures in pajamas sipped warm cocoa and rocked in tiny chairs. Their houses were shaped like sugar cubes, and the streets were made of biscuit crumbs. The whole village glowed with golden light, and the air inside shimmered with the smell of cinnamon and dreams. Lucy smiled. She didn't want to disturb them, so she floated to the next bubble. This one held a forest of glowing mushrooms. Tiny fairies with wings like petals flew in slow spirals, painting the mushroom tops with sparkly dust. Somewhere, a tiny harp played, plucked by invisible fingers. The fairies waved at her, then went back to their quiet music. And in the next bubble was a sky made of jelly. Yes, jelly. Soft and wobbly, with stars floating in it like sprinkles. A sleepy whale floated through the jelly sky, singing a song that sounded like a lullaby made of bubbles. Lucy giggled, then covered her mouth. It felt like laughter might wake up the whole sky. She floated through the bubble, sky for a long while, peeking into each tiny world. Some were filled with soft snow and gentle snow, foxes who wore scarves. Others were cozy libraries where book pages turned themselves while candles flickered. One bubble held a single giant flower, and inside the petals, a tiny creature slept on a bed of dewdrops. Everywhere she looked, there was calm, there was wonder, there was quiet joy. Then she came to the largest bubble of all. It shimmered silver and gold, and its surface rippled like water touched by moonlight. When she floated close, it opened, just like a yawn, and gently pulled her inside. This bubble was empty, but not in a lonely way. It felt like a blank page, like a sky that hadn't been painted yet. Lucy floated in the center and slowly reached for her brush. She dipped it into her jar. This time, the color came out soft and golden, like the very first star at evening. And she began to paint. She painted a sky that curved around like a hug. She painted clouds that sang lullabies when you touched them. She painted stars that blinked like sleepy eyes, and moons that glowed with kindness. As she painted, the bubble filled with her sky. The golden light wrapped around her, and the stars winked and whispered. She painted slowly, with love, with care, and when she finished, the sky inside the bubble felt like bedtime, soft, safe, dreamy. Lucy yawned just a little. The bubble swirled gently, like it was cradling her in light. She curled up in the middle, her paintbrush still in her hand, and the sky around her blinked softly, like it was ready to dream too. The bubble gently floated through the sky, carrying Princess Lucy as if she were resting in the palm of a cloud. Inside, her painted stars twinkled softly, and the moon she had brushed into the sky gave off a warm, sleepy glow. She lay curled up on a gentle patch of air, her head resting on her arms, her paintbrush still held loosely in her fingers. Outside the bubble, the sky was growing deeper, shifting from soft lavender to a slow, velvety blue. Other bubbles drifted nearby, glowing like lanterns in the dark. Some moved slowly, others spun in lazy circles, but all of them floated quietly, as if they were wrapped in silence. Lucy stirred gently, her eyes fluttering open. She sat up, blinking sleepily. The stars she had painted blinked back at her, as if to say, "You're still dreaming, little princess." She smiled softly and looked around. The bubble she was in had grown bigger while she slept. It felt like it was waiting for her to do something more. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her little jar of star colors. When she opened it, a tiny sigh of light rose from inside, like a whisper just waking up. She dipped her brush into the softest color she could find, a pale, silvery blue that shimmered like a quiet thought. Then she began to paint again, this time with slow, drifting strokes. She painted a path, a glowing ribbon of light that trailed from the bubble and stretched out into the sky beyond. As the ribbon grew longer, the bubble gently opened, and Lucy floated out, following the path she had painted. The ribbon of light curled and twirled, leading her through the sky like a lullaby leading a dreamer. She passed by floating meadows made of feathers and clouds, shaped like sleeping cats. She passed through a tunnel of soft stars that hummed when she drifted through them, each one singing a quiet note like a chime far away. Then, at the end of the ribbon, she saw it a gentle glimmer on the horizon. A little village nestled in a cloud, glowing faintly in the twilight. The houses were shaped like teapots and teacups, and tiny puffs of steam rose from their chimneys. The streets were lined with lanterns that swung softly, even though there was no wind. Lucy floated down, her slippers touching down on a path made of soft sugar stones. The air smelled like chamomile and honey, and the whole village felt like a bedtime story waiting to be told. Tiny creatures peeked out from behind round doors. They had soft fur and small, sleepy eyes. Some wore nightcaps, and others held little mugs of warm milk. When they saw Lucy, they smiled shyly, then came out to greet her. One of them, a chubby little creature with ears like puffballs, waddled up to her and offered a blanket made of cloud thread. Lucy took it gently and draped it around her shoulders. The creature nodded in approval, then pointed toward the center of the village. There, under a big tree with leaves like stars, was a round stone stage. Around it were cushions and cozy nests, and the village creatures were gathering, curling up as if waiting for something lovely. Lucy stepped onto the stage, her paintbrush in hand. She looked up at the sky above the village. It was still pale, still waiting. She dipped her brush into the jar once more and began to paint. She painted a bedtime sky just for the village. She painted soft clouds that drifted like lullabies. She painted stars that blinked in slow, sleepy patterns. She painted a moon that looked kind and gentle, with eyes half closed in rest. As she painted, the village watched in silence. Some of the creatures sighed. Others yawned and cuddled into their nests. A few closed their eyes, trusting that the sky above would keep them safe and warm. Lucy finished with a gentle swirl of silver mist that wrapped around the moon like a scarf. Then she stepped back, holding her brush close, and looked up at what she had made. The sky above the teacup village now shimmered with peace. It felt like a story that wanted to be a dream. The stars twinkled softly, and the moon glowed like a lantern left on just in case someone needed a little more light. The village creatures clapped quietly, not loud claps, but soft pats of their little paws and hands, like the way rain might applaud a flower. One of the creatures brought her a cup of warm tea, and another offered a pillow shaped like a star. Lucy sat down beneath the glowing tree and sipped the tea. It tasted like sleepy thoughts and gentle songs. The creatures nestled around her, some leaning against her gown, others curling up near her feet. She smiled, warm and cozy, and looked up one more time at the sky she had painted. It was calm, it was kind, it was ready for dreams. Lucy closed her eyes just for a moment, and beside her, the little creatures yawned and snuggled close, their soft breathing joining the hush of the night. The sky above blinked once, slowly. Then everything grew still again. The village in the clouds was wrapped in stillness like a soft blanket pulled up to the chin. Tiny teapots puffed out the last wisps of steam, and the lanterns swayed gently on their strings, dimming little by little, as if they too were getting sleepy. Above it all, Princess Lucy's painted sky shimmered quietly, full of stars that blinked slowly and a moon that smiled down with a sleepy sigh. Lucy sat beneath the glowing tree, her teacup now empty and warm in her hands. The creatures around her were fast asleep, curled up in little nests of moss and fluff. Some had tiny snoring sounds like bubbles popping. Others made soft humming noises like lullabies with no words. She looked down at her paintbrush, resting across her lap, and gave it a quiet pat. "Thank you," she whispered in her heart, where the words floated gently like feathers. Just then, the wind returned. It was softer than before, like a hush made of stardust. It tickled her cheek and swirled around her slippers, lifting the ends of her gown just enough to let her know it was time to go. Lucy stood slowly, careful not to wake the sleeping creatures. She placed the teacup beside one of them, tucked her paintbrush into her ribbon sash, and gave the glowing tree one last look. Its leaves twinkled gently, as if waving goodbye. The wind carried her up once more, lifting her from the soft village and into the open sky. She rose above the rooftops, above the lanterns, above the moonlight, and into a place where the stars sang in quiet hums. Far ahead she saw a new light, not bright, not loud, just a soft, flickering glow, like a candle at the end of a hallway. She floated toward it slowly, the wind guiding her through the quiet air. Around her, the sky began to shimmer in new ways. The stars here were shaped like tiny bells, and when the wind passed through them, they chimed ever so gently. Ding, ding, dong, dong. The sound made Lucy's heart feel warm, like the beginning of a bedtime story. She drifted onward, letting the sound guide her, until she came to something unexpected. A staircase. But this one was different from the one before. It wasn't made of clouds or stars, but of soft floating books. Each step was a closed book, its cover glowing faintly. When she stepped on the first one, it opened just a little and whispered words in a language made of dreams. She climbed slowly, each book opening and whispering as she passed. On the next step, a story about a bear who built a boat from fallen leaves. On the one after that, a tale of a tiny mouse who painted the moon with a paintbrush made of whiskers. And on the next, a bedtime song sung by a dragon who only roared in lullabies. Lucy smiled with each step, her heart dancing gently with the stories around her. At the top of the staircase was a round platform, made of soft wood, like a tree stump with rings that glowed in the dark. Surrounding it were bookshelves that floated in the air, turning slowly, filled with books of every shape and size. Some of the books had wings, some had little tails, some had covers made of glittering cloth, and others were wrapped in sleepy moss. In the middle of it all was a creature. It was tall and round, with a beard made of bookmarks and glasses that twinkled like stars. It wore a robe dotted with tiny letters that moved and danced across the fabric like fireflies. The creature sat in a floating armchair, snoring softly, a book resting open on its belly. Lucy floated closer. The creature stirred and blinked slowly. Its eyes were kind and sleepy. "Ah," it rumbled in a voice like a warm blanket, "you must be the painter of stars." Lucy nodded with a small smile. The creature yawned a great big yawn, which made 3 books flap open and close nearby. "I've been waiting for you," it said, "though I may have dozed off once or twice." Lucy giggled softly. The creature reached behind its chair and pulled out a scroll, long and glowing, rolled up with a ribbon made of moon thread. "This," it whispered, "is the sky of forgotten stories. A sky that once held all the dreams that were almost dreamed." Lucy's eyes sparkled. "Would you help me bring them back?" She nodded, and the creature handed her the scroll. When she opened it, the air around them filled with soft images. Faded stars, quiet words, and skies that looked like they were trying to remember old dreams. She dipped her brush into her jar once more, this time drawing out a color that shimmered like memory and morning. And then she painted. She painted skies filled with stories that had waited a long time. Skies with soft dragons who sang duets with the clouds. Skies where stars wore pajamas. Skies where moons told jokes and the wind wrote poems on the backs of birds. The floating books spun gently, whispering their thanks. The creature beside her hummed in joy, turning pages with a finger made of ribbon, and the sky of forgotten stories began to glow. Lucy painted until the scroll was full. When she finished, the sky above the platform shimmered with new stars, each one blinking slowly, like a story just beginning to dream again. The creature placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've made them remember," it said. And Lucy, with her brush resting in her hand, smiled softly. She looked up at the sky she had helped fill. It looked like a lullaby. It looked like home. High above the floating library, where books turned their own pages and stars blinked like sleepy eyes, Princess Lucy stood quietly on the soft wooden platform. The sky of forgotten stories shimmered above her, filled now with dreams that had come home, painted gently back into the world. The kindly creature with the bookmark beard gave her a slow, happy blink, his glasses glinting in the soft starlight. Around them, the floating books gave little flutters, their covers glowing with warmth. The wind returned again, quiet and kind, wrapping around Lucy's ankles like a cat curling in for a nap. She looked up, far across the sky, past the drifting books and sleepy clouds. A new light shimmered. It wasn't bright, just a soft glow like the last candle in a window before bedtime. The creature gave a small nod. "That's the way of the wishing stars," it said with a whispery smile. "They've been waiting for you, I think." Lucy tucked her scroll gently into the folds of her gown, slipped her paintbrush back into its ribbon sash, and waved to the floating books and the sleepy librarian, who yawned a yawn so big it made the shelves spin, once slowly before settling again. The wind lifted her gently, and she rose from the platform, floating higher and higher, past the sky of forgotten stories, past the books that waved their pages like sleepy hands, and into the soft, cool air of a new sky. This sky was darker, deeper, like velvet draped over the stars. But it wasn't scary. It was the kind of dark that made soft things seem softer, the kind of dark that whispered, "You're safe now. You can rest." Ahead of her, the glow she had seen was clearer now. It wasn't just one light. It was many. Tiny dots of silver and soft gold shimmered in a slow spiral like a path made of stars winding gently through the sky. Each one pulsed with a steady, gentle rhythm. Not fast, not loud, just calm. Lucy reached the beginning of the spiral and hovered there for a moment, her heart fluttering like a bird made of clouds. The stars weren't like the others she had painted. These stars had little tails. Tiny glowing trails of light stretched behind each one, and they moved ever so slowly. Like they were floating through honey, they drifted and turned and spun in lazy circles, as if they were thinking. Lucy floated closer to one of them. It blinked softly and drifted toward her, and then, just as it passed by, she heard something. A whisper. It wasn't a word. Not really. It was more like a wish. A tiny voice in the back of her mind, as soft as a dream, saying something like, "I hope I find my way." She turned to the star, watching it drift away. Then another floated past, and this one whispered, "I wish I could fly." And then another, "I wish for a friend. I wish for a story. I wish for soft wings. I wish for warm tea." Lucy gasped gently. These were wishing stars, not the big, bright ones that shot across the sky with a swoosh and a sparkle. These were the quiet ones. The small, slow, sleepy wishes. The ones whispered by little voices just before they drifted off to sleep. She dipped her brush into her jar, and this time the color that came out was the softest she had ever seen. It looked like the glow of a firefly or the shine of a tear made of hope. It shimmered gently, as if it didn't want to be seen too quickly. With slow, careful strokes, she painted a net in the air, not a catching net, but a guiding one. It glowed with soft curves and shimmering threads that waved gently like seaweed in a calm tide. The wishing stars floated toward it, drawn to its warmth, and began to settle into its soft strands. But they didn't stop moving. Instead, the net began to drift, carrying them gently forward, guiding them along the spiral path through the sky. Lucy floated beside it, adding little touches with her brush. A swirl here, a dot of gold there, a soft sparkle to keep the net glowing, but not too bright. She whispered to the stars as they passed, "You're not too small. You're not forgotten. You're on your way." And the stars glowed a little brighter. Together, they drifted along the spiral path, winding slowly through the sky. The stars whispered their wishes, and Lucy listened, her heart filling with each one. Some were tiny. "I wish for a cuddle." I wish for a soft song. Some were big. I wish for courage. I wish for a sky of my own. But all of them were gentle, and all of them were welcome. At the end of the spiral path, the net began to dissolve, slowly and softly, like morning mist touched by sunlight. The stars floated free again, but now they knew where they were going. They blinked once, twice, then drifted off into the sky, each one finding a quiet corner to rest in. Lucy watched them go, her brush still in her hand. She had not painted the stars themselves. She had only helped them find their way. And that, she thought, was its own kind of magic. The wind curled around her again, soft and sleepy. She let it carry her. Her eyes were growing heavy now. She had painted skies. She had painted dreams. She had painted a path for wishes. And now the sky was ready to rest. So was she. The wind carried Princess Lucy gently, as if it knew she needed to drift now. Not soar. She floated through the sky like a dandelion seed, soft and slow and silent. Her eyes blinked sleepily, and her brush rested across her lap, still glowing faintly with the shimmer of the wishing stars. The sky around her had grown deeper now, like a cozy blanket pulled up to the chin of the world. The stars she had guided were blinking in their new homes, tucked into corners of the sky like little night lights, each one glowing with hope. Lucy sighed, a quiet, peaceful sigh. She was not sure where the wind was taking her, but she didn't mind. Everything felt gentle here. Everything felt kind. Soon she began to see something ahead, a soft swirl of colors, floating like a ribbon in the sky. It twisted and turned, but not quickly. It moved like a lullaby being sung very slowly, with long, gentle notes. The swirl led her to a cloud, but this cloud was unlike any she had seen before. It was shaped like a cradle. It glowed with a soft light from within, and its edges curled like the pages of a bedtime book. Around it, tiny stars hovered close, like they were keeping watch. And resting inside the cloud, cradle was something small and glowing. Lucy floated closer, her breath catching softly in her throat. It was a baby star. No bigger than a teacup, it blinked up at her with sleepy eyes. Its light was dim, like a candle just before it sleeps, and it gave off the tiniest hum. Not a song, not yet, but the beginning of one. Beside the cradle, a gentle creature stood guard. It was tall and soft-looking, with a body made of drifting mist and eyes like little moons. The creature nodded to Lucy as she approached, its voice no louder than a whisper. "She has not yet found her sky," it said. "She is waiting for her first dream." Lucy felt a warm flutter in her chest. "May I help?" she asked in her quiet heart voice. The mist creature nodded once and stepped aside. Lucy floated gently to the edge of the cradle and looked down at the baby star. It blinked sleepily, its light flickering like a tiny heartbeat. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her jar of star colors. Just one drop remained, a soft, pale glow that shimmered like the space between notes in a lullaby. She dipped her brush into the jar and began to paint in the air above the cradle. Not a sky this time, not a path, not a moon, just a dream, a very first dream. She painted a blanket made of starlight, embroidered with kindness. She painted clouds that whispered stories and moons that cuddled close. She painted the feeling of being wrapped in love, tucked in safe, with warm hands nearby and soft voices saying, "You are precious. You are home." As she painted, the baby star blinked wider and its light began to grow. Tiny sparks flickered around it and the humming grew louder, not louder, just fuller, like a song remembering its tune. The mist creature watched, its eyes glowing softly. Lucy finished her painting and leaned in close. "You are ready now," she whispered to the little star. The star pulsed gently, once, twice, and then began to rise. It floated upward, swaying like a leaf on a breeze, and the cradle clouds slowly unfolded, letting it go with a soft sigh. The mist creature raised its arms, and the wind swirled around them all. Then, with the quietest burst of light, the baby star zoomed upward. Not too fast, not too bright, just right. It joined the sky above them, finding its perfect spot among the stars Lucy had guided. It blinked once, then again, then settled into a soft, sleepy glow. And far below, in the cradle cloud, Lucy smiled. She turned to the mist creature. "Where do stars go when they grow up?" The creature's voice was like the hush between waves. They become dreams. They become stories. They become skies for others to rest beneath. Lucy nodded slowly. She looked up at the sky, her sky, the one she had painted piece by piece with her brush and her heart. It was full now, full of glowing wishes, full of sleepy stars, full of dreamers and dancers and soft, safe light. The mist creature stepped forward and gently touched her shoulder. "It is time to return, little painter," it said. "The night is nearly done." Lucy felt the wind curl around her once more, lifting her slowly into the sky. She looked back at the cradle, now quiet and still. She looked at the baby star, now glowing above. And then she let her eyes close for just a moment as the wind carried her home. The sky whispered all around her, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And she drifted on, her heart floating like a kite in the quiet air. Princess Lucy floated gently, wrapped in the hush of the wind, her eyes half closed and her mind full of stars. Around her, the sky was quieter now, as if it, too, was growing sleepy after such a gentle night. The stars twinkled softly, blinking like tired eyes, and the moon had settled deeper into its curve, glowing with a warm, golden light. The clouds below her looked like soft beds, and the air smelled faintly of night flowers and dreams. As she drifted through the sky, her brush still tucked safely in her sash, and her jar of colors nearly empty, a new sound reached her ears, a soft humming, like someone singing to themselves in the dark. She turned slowly, following the sound, and soon saw where it was coming from. It was a boat made of silver leaves and soft wood, floating on a river of sky. Yes, a river high above the world, flowing quietly through the clouds like melted moonlight. Its surface shimmered with stars, and it moved slowly, curling through the sky like a ribbon. The boat bobbed gently in the water, glowing faintly. Inside it sat an old woman with long silver hair that tumbled like waterfalls over her shoulders. She wore a gown made of woven night, and her eyes twinkled like they had seen every dream in the world. She was humming a lullaby, soft and low, as she steered the boat with a paddle shaped like a feather. Lucy floated closer. The woman looked up and smiled. "Climb aboard, little star painter," she said, her voice like velvet. "There's one more place to visit before the night is done." Lucy stepped into the boat, and it rocked gently beneath her feet. She sat on a cushion made of cloud feathers, and the woman dipped the paddle once, twice, and the boat began to glide. They floated down the river of stars in silence for a while, just listening to the hum of the sky and the tiny splashes of starlight as the paddle stirred the water. The woman looked at Lucy with kind eyes. "You've painted skies," she said softly. "You've painted stars and stories and dreams. But there is one sky left." Lucy tilted her head, curious. The woman pointed ahead, where the river curved around a sleepy hill of mist. "The sky of memories," she whispered. "It's where all the quiet moments go, the ones people forget but never stop feeling." Lucy's heart fluttered gently. The boat followed the curve of the river until they came to a still, wide pool of sky. It was quiet here, so quiet that Lucy could hear her own breath. The water beneath them shimmered, but not with stars. Instead, soft shapes floated just beneath the surface. A child's first laugh, a hug given in a sunlit room, a hand held during a storm, the sound of a lullaby long ago. Memories. Lucy gazed into the water, and her eyes filled with gentle wonder. "They're beautiful," she whispered. The woman nodded. "They are, but they fade if no one remembers to light them again." Lucy reached slowly for her jar of star colors. Only a faint glow remained at the bottom. Just a drop, no more. She looked up at the woman, unsure. The old woman smiled and placed something in Lucy's hand. A new jar. This one was different. It was clear and cool and filled with a soft golden light. Not bright, not sharp, just warm, familiar. "This is the color of remembering," the woman said. "It only works when painted with love." Lucy dipped her brush into the new jar. The glow that clung to the bristles made her heart feel like it was being hugged. She leaned over the side of the boat and gently tapped the water with her brush. Tiny lights bloomed. One by one, the memories beneath the surface began to glow, softly, like candlelight remembered from long ago. She painted with slow strokes, careful and kind. A mother rocking her baby in the quiet of night. A grandparent's laugh in a kitchen full of cookies. A friend sharing a secret under a starry sky. A child's first wish whispered into the dark. Each memory lit up gently, then floated upward, joining the sky above in a soft, glowing pattern. They looked like stars, but not quite. They blinked slower. They glowed warmer. They pulsed like heartbeats. Lucy painted until the pool was full of light, and the sky above shimmered with soft, golden stars that carried the feeling of being safe, loved, and remembered. When she finished, she looked up at the old woman. The woman was smiling, her eyes bright with quiet joy. "You've painted the sky that holds us all," she said, "the one we carry inside." Lucy's eyes grew misty. The boat turned slowly, beginning its quiet journey back down the river of stars. As they floated, the new stars above followed them, blinking slowly, wrapping the sky in a blanket made not of wishes or stories, but of love. The river glowed a little brighter now. The wind was softer. The world was still, and Princess Lucy, painter of skies, leaned back on her cushion and closed her eyes. She didn't sleep yet. but she was very, very close. The starboat floated gently down the river of sky, its silver leaves rustling softly as the wind hummed a tune too quiet to sing. Princess Lucy lay back on her cushion, eyes half-lidded, her paintbrush resting across her chest like a tiny wand asleep. The old woman at the helm said nothing now, only dipped the feathered paddle into the starlit current once in a while, guiding them gently through the hush. The river wound through the sky like a sleepy snake, curling around clouds shaped like pillows and drifting past swaying trees that grew from floating islands. The leaves of those trees glowed faintly, like they remembered the stars Lucy had painted. The sky above was full now, full of soft dreams, kind wishes, and glowing memories. Lucy had painted so much, and each sky had whispered back its thanks. As they floated along, tiny firefly lanterns began to appear on either side of the river. They drifted up from the sky's surface and hovered in the air, blinking slowly as though they were breathing. Lucy sat up, blinking sleep from her eyes. "What are they?" she asked in her quiet heart voice. The old woman smiled, her silver hair glowing faintly in the lantern light. "These," she said softly, "are the dreams that wait. They are not ready to be dreamed yet, but soon." Lucy reached her hand toward one, and gently the lantern floated closer, resting in her open palm. Inside, she saw a flicker, a tiny image of something not quite formed. It looked like a boat made of cake floating on a jelly sea, with a giggling fox wearing rain boots. She smiled. "It's lovely," she whispered. The lantern blinked once, then floated away, drifting higher into the sky where it could glow in its own time. The river began to widen, opening into a great sky lake, round and still like a mirror. The boat drifted into its center and came to a gentle stop. The old woman set down her paddle and looked up. "This is the quiet sky," she said. "It's where the world catches its breath." All around them, the stars blinked slowly, and the clouds swirled in dreamy spirals. Nothing moved quickly. Nothing hurried. Even time seemed to pause just for a moment to rest. Lucy stood in the boat and looked around. The quiet sky was peaceful, but it felt like something was missing. She reached into her sash and pulled out her brush. The old woman smiled knowingly and handed her one last jar, this one filled with color so soft it looked almost invisible. But when Lucy opened it, a warmth rose from inside, like the feeling of being wrapped in a hug. "What is it?" she asked. The woman's voice was a whisper on the breeze. "It's silence, but the good kind, the kind that listens." Lucy dipped her brush into the jar and began to paint. She painted loops of golden hush and spirals of gentle pause. She painted stillness that felt safe, like sitting beneath a tree with a book on your lap and all the time in the world to read it. She painted the feeling of being alone, but not lonely. As she painted, the sky around them began to glow with a soft, silvery light. The clouds grew fluffier, the stars blinked slower, and the air felt like a lullaby with no words, just music. The old woman closed her eyes and rested her hands on her knees. "Thank you, little painter," she said, barely more than a whisper. Lucy smiled gently. She looked at the sky she had painted, a sky of peace, of quiet, of stillness. It didn't sparkle or shine like the others. but it made her heart feel full in a different way. Like the way a soft sigh feels when you're tucked in deep and sleep is only a few breaths away. The wind returned, soft as ever, and curled around her ankles like a kitten ready to nap. The boat began to move again. Slowly gliding away from the quiet sky, Lucy turned to the old woman, who was now watching her with eyes that twinkled like bedtime stories. "Where will you go next?" Lucy asked softly. The woman chuckled gently. "Oh, I'll be here," she said. "There are always more dreams to guide, more skies to soothe." Lucy nodded. The boat reached the edge of the sky lake and drifted toward a small dock made of stardust planks. Lucy stepped out onto it, her slippers making no sound on the soft boards. The wind curled around her again, lifting her gently as the boat drifted back into the distance. She looked down one last time. The old woman waved once. Lucy waved too, then turned toward the sky ahead. It was darker now, not scary, dark, just sleepy, dark. The stars above were dimming, one by one, as if they were closing their eyes. The wind carried her steadily forward. She was going home, and in her heart, she carried every sky she had painted, every wish she had heard, every quiet she had touched. The world was ready to rest now, and so was she. The sky was growing sleepier by the moment, as Princess Lucy floated on the wind's gentle path. The stars above her blinked slower and slower, their glow softening like candlelight before it fades. The dark blue of the sky deepened into the color of cozy shadows, and the clouds stretched out long and low, like blankets being pulled across the world. Lucy's eyes were half closed now. Her brush was still tucked into her sash, though it no longer glowed. Her jar of star colors, now empty, nestled quietly in her pocket. It had given all it had, and now it was resting too. The wind curled around her like a shawl, keeping her warm as it carried her through the hush of the night. Far below, the hills she knew so well rolled gently beneath her, like soft waves in a sea of grass. Her glass castle glimmered in the distance, its towers glowing faintly, waiting for her return. But before she reached home, the wind turned her gently toward one last place, a small hill tucked in a little fold of the clouds, where a group of tiny creatures sat in a circle, looking up at the sky with wide, wondering eyes. They were the smallest of dreamers, soft, furred round, bellied, some with wings, some with floppy ears, all wrapped in little cloaks of moss and moon thread. They blinked up at her as she floated down, and one of them gave a tiny wave with their paw. Lucy smiled and landed softly in the center of their circle. "We heard you were coming," one whispered. "We've been waiting for a bedtime sky," said another. One creature held out a tiny scroll, its corners glowing faintly. "It's blank," they said. "Could you paint us just one more?" Lucy looked around at their hopeful faces, their sleepy eyes, their gentle hearts. She reached for her brush, then paused. Her jar was empty. She looked up at the sky. The stars had grown faint. The moon was a soft sliver. The colors of her dreams had been used, every last shimmer and glow. But then she felt something, a warmth in her chest, not from the jar, not from the brush, from her heart. She dipped her brush into that feeling, a soft, glowing kindness that had grown there through every sky, every wish. every dream she had painted. The bristles shimmered just a little, just enough. She looked at the tiny scroll and began to paint. She painted slowly, gently, with strokes that curved like lullabies and shimmered like whispered goodnights. She painted a sky just for them, a sky with stars that giggled softly when you touched them, a sky with clouds shaped like cuddles and moons that hummed sleepy songs. She painted little houses made of petals and floating hammocks and tiny glowing lights that blinked like fireflies getting ready for bed. The creatures watched with wide eyes, their paws tucked under their chins, their wings fluttering softly. When she finished, the scroll glowed faintly, then floated up into the sky and unrolled itself, stretching wide above them like a blanket. The little creatures curled up together, yawning and snuggling close. One by one, their eyes closed. Their dreams began, and the painted sky above them blinked slowly, gently, like a guardian keeping watch. Lucy stood very still. Watching them sleep, she felt something stir in the air. A soft bell, a quiet chime, the sound of morning almost beginning. The wind returned, soft as ever, and wrapped itself around her. It was time. She turned toward her castle in the distance. It glowed now with the softest pink light, the kind that only rises when night is almost done and dreams are just beginning to fade into morning. The wind lifted her once more. She rose slowly, leaving behind the sleepy hill and the tiny dreamers and the scroll of stars. Her heart was full of stillness, full of light, full of love. As she floated toward the castle, the wind whispered to her, "You've painted the sky, little one. Now let it hold you." She passed over the silver grass, the humming trees, the soft hills that had watched her leave. She passed over the glowing lake that mirrored the fading stars, and finally, she reached her castle, still and beautiful, perched high above the world like a dream waiting to be remembered. The glass towers glowed like frost kissed by sunrise. The windows blinked with candlelight. The wind opened her window gently, like a page turned in a bedtime book. Lucy floated inside. Her room was just as she had left it, soft, quiet, glowing faintly. The moon mice slept in their teacups. The dragonflies rested in velvet folds. Her bed waited, shaped like a cloud, wrapped in blankets that smelled like stardust and dreams. She landed softly on the floor and stepped out of her slippers. She placed her brush gently on her nightstand. Her jar of colors, now empty, glowed once more, just a little, then dimmed into sleep. Lucy climbed into her bed and pulled the covers up to her chin. Outside her window, the sky she had painted blinked one last time, and then it rested. So did she. The glass castle was still. Not the kind of still that feels lonely, but the stillness that gently gathers around you when it's time to sleep. The halls were wrapped in hush. The curtains swayed in slow, sleepy waves, and the silver grass outside the windows shimmered faintly in the early light of dawn. Princess Lucy lay in her cloud-shaped bed, her cheeks glowing softly, her long lashes resting against her skin. The blanket, stitched with threads of light and kindness, was tucked around her like a hug. She didn't move. Not yet. She was resting in that quiet space between dreaming and waking, where all the best stories live. Her brush rested beside her on a velvet pillow. It no longer glowed, but it still shimmered faintly, holding the memory of all the skies it had touched. And on her nightstand sat the little jar of star colors, now empty, but gently warm, as if it had one last glow tucked inside for safekeeping. Outside her window, the sky she had painted stretched far and wide, a sky filled with soft stars and sleepy wishes, a sky full of dreams that floated like feathers. A sky that had been lonely once, but wasn't anymore. The moon had dipped behind the hills, leaving behind a trail of soft gold. The stars blinked slower now, their light fading gently into the pale blush of morning, but none of them felt forgotten. Every single one had a place, a purpose, a story, just like Lucy. And as she lay there, not quite asleep, not quite awake, the wind returned for the last time. It slipped quietly through the open window and curled around her like a lullaby. It didn't ask her to follow. It didn't carry her away. Tonight, it had only come to say thank you. Thank you for painting the skies. Thank you for listening to the stars. Thank you for making the night feel like home. The wind kissed her cheek and fluttered her blanket, then drifted back out into the world, where other dreams were beginning to stir. Somewhere far away, a sleepy fox tucked itself beneath a glowing mushroom. Somewhere else, a baby star blinked sleepily in its cloud cradle. And in the teacup village, the pillow creatures still slept beneath the sky she had painted just for them. In the sky of forgotten stories, the floating books turned their pages with soft, papery sighs. In the garden of humming flowers, the lantern, bugs blinked slowly like tiny heartbeats. And in the sky of quiet wishes, the soft stars still whispered their hopes, drifting gently across the sky, waiting for their turn to twinkle. Everywhere, the world was wrapped in rest, and in the heart of it all, in her glowing tower, Princess Lucy rested too. She smiled in her sleep, just a little, as if she could still hear the stars humming. She dreamed of paintbrushes dipped in kindness. She dreamed of clouds that told stories. She dreamed of skies that were always there, waiting to be filled with love. And outside her window, the last stars blinked goodbye as the first light of day tiptoed gently across the land. The castle sighed, the hills yawned, and the skies settled into stillness. And Lucy, the princess who painted the night, floated deeper into sleep, wrapped in the very dreams she had made. The morning had not yet fully arrived. It waited patiently behind the hills, letting the soft blue of the sky stretch just a little longer, like a final note held at the end of a lullaby. The stars had finished their quiet dances and now rested deep in the folds of the sky, like tiny lights tucked under a blanket. Inside her tower room, Princess Lucy still slept. The cloud-shaped bed cradled her gently, its edges puffed just right, and the blankets had curled around her like a story holding its last page. Her breathing was slow and even, and her hands, resting on her chest, held the faintest shimmer of stardust. Everything was still, but not far from the castle. The world was waking in the softest, sleepiest way. The silver grass swayed with slow sighs. The trees stretched their branches like arms waking from a lovely dream. The lake nearby rippled once, then settled again, its surface reflecting the sky Lucy had painted, though it was fading now into the pale light of dawn. In the gardens below, the moon mice peeked from their teacups, blinking their tiny eyes. One stretched, then curled back up. Another yawned so wide it tipped over into a petal. They weren't quite ready to begin the day. Not yet. This was the in-between time, the time when dreams linger like fog and the world still whispers. Above the castle, the tower where Lucy slept glowed softly. The glass shimmered with the last colors of night, the deep purples, the gentle blues, the quiet golds. Her tower had always been the heart of the sky, the place where dreams were painted and sent out like tiny boats on a silver sea, and now it waited. Waited for her to stir, waited for her to open her eyes. But not just yet, because this morning was different. This morning, something sweet was happening. A quiet thank you moved through the air. One by one, the skies she had painted sent their love. From the teacup village, a soft breeze carried the scent of warm milk and honey, drifting through the clouds until it reached her window. From the floating garden, the pillow creatures fluttered their wings in slow circles, sending soft sparkles into the sky that shimmered like a sigh. From the pond of memories, a gentle ripple of golden light spread outward, wrapping her tower in a ring of warmth. And far, far away, a baby star blinked once more, sending a sleepy hum through the air, a lullaby just for her. Even the wind, who had always been her quiet companion, returned for the briefest moment. It didn't swirl or lift or call. It simply brushed against the tower once, like a hand resting on a shoulder, then drifted away. Inside, the room was cozy and dim, lit only by the soft glow of the fading stars outside. Lucy stirred, just a little. Her brow twitched, and her fingers curled softly. She was not ready to wake. Not yet. Her dreams were still floating. Gentle dreams of skies unpainted, of stars not yet named, of clouds shaped like whales and moons that carried stories in little nets of light. She dreamed of her paintbrush humming in her hand. She dreamed of laughter made of glitter and rivers that sang. She dreamed of skies that whispered, "Come back when you're ready." And in her dreams, she was floating again, not far, just through soft skies she already knew, the kind of floating that feels like rocking in someone's arms, the kind that says, "You are home." The castle remained still, the world remained soft, and Lucy, wrapped in her blanket and her dreams, breathed in a little deeper. She was safe, she was loved. She had made the night special, not just with colors, but with care. And now the world was returning that love, with silence, with peace, with rest. Outside her window, the first bird sang, just one note, low and gentle, like the beginning of a waking song, but the stars still blinked in the far corners of the sky, and the moon, though fading, had not left. There was still time for one more sigh, one more breath, one more dream. And so the princess who painted the night sky stayed right where she was, still, quiet, dreaming, and the world, full of stars and stories and soft skies, waited with her. The light of morning had reached the edge of the hills, but it did not hurry. It moved slowly, gently, as if it knew someone very special was still sleeping. The sky above the castle had changed from deep twilight to the softest blue, the color of dreams just before they vanish. But even as the day began to stretch its golden fingers, the world remained wrapped in a hush. Inside the tall glass tower, Princess Lucy lay nestled in her cloud-shaped bed. Her chest rose and fell in the quiet rhythm of sleep, and her face was calm, peaceful, full of the softness that only true rest can bring. All around her, the room seemed to hold its breath. The moon, mice had tiptoed out of their teacups and were curled up in tiny hammocks above her dresser. The velvet curtains hung still, and even the dragonflies resting on the window panes had stopped fluttering their wings. Outside, the skies she had painted still shimmered faintly, even in the coming light. Though the stars were fading, their warmth lingered. The skies remembered her brush, her hums, and her heart, and they glowed with quiet love. The journey had been long and full of wonder. Lucy had danced with the stars, painted skies for dreamers, whispered to baby wishes, and floated through gardens where stories slept. She had brought color to corners of the sky that had waited so patiently for her, and in return, those skies had wrapped her in their calm. Now her work was done. Not forever, of course. There would be other nights, other dreams, other skies waiting to be painted. But for now, the sky had all it needed, and so did she. A soft breeze drifted through the window, carrying with it the scent of morning dew and a tiny note of bird song. It curled around her bed like a lullaby, brushing her cheek, tugging lightly at her hair. Lucy stirred. She opened her eyes just a little, blinking in the soft light. Outside, the world had changed. The stars she had painted were still there, tucked into the sky like little dreams, waiting for bedtime again. The moon had slipped behind the hills, the last sliver waving goodbye. She sat up slowly, her blanket falling to her lap. Her slippers waited at the edge of the bed, softly glowing. Her brush lay beside her, quiet now but still full of memories. Her jar of colors, empty but content, shimmered faintly, as if smiling. Lucy stretched her arms high over her head and gave a long, cozy yawn, the kind that makes your toes wiggle and your heart feel warm. She stepped out of bed and padded to the window. The sky was pale now, golden and blue, and the hills were bathed in gentle light. The glass of her tower sparkled in the sunlight, and the trees swayed with the first morning breeze. She smiled. The world was awake again. And though the stars had gone to sleep, she knew they would be there waiting when night returned. She looked down at her paintbrush and gently picked it up. It felt cool and familiar in her hand. She traced her finger along the bristles, remembering. Then, with a soft sigh, she placed it on her windowsill, where it could rest too. Tonight she would not need it. Tonight, the sky would hold itself. Lucy stepped back into her room, where the moon, mice still slept, and the dragonflies blinked slowly. She pulled her chair close to the window and sat down, wrapping her blanket around her shoulders. She watched the morning grow brighter. She listened to the soft sounds of the castle waking. And she closed her eyes once more, just for a minute, letting the peace settle in her chest like a feather floating down. All around her, everything was calm. Everything was quiet. And in the heart of her tower, In the glow of a morning that had waited so patiently, the princess who painted the night sky rested at last, not because she was tired, but because she was full, full of dreams, full of love, full of light. And as a new day stretched its arms across the sky, Lucy whispered one last wish into the wind, one for every child, every dreamer, every sleepy heart. May your dreams always find their sky. Then she smiled, and the sky, her sky, smiled back.